In this video, we're going to talk about Draftkings Strategy for UFC 309. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. As always, we're going to start with the value plays. So these are going to be plays at 8,000 and below, essentially underdogs you need in your lineups to make the salary work. There are quite a few on this slate. But before we look at those, if you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. That's a full card breakdown, different than this video. You're going to know why we pick the sides that we pick and why we talk about the fighters the way that we talk about them on this video if you watch that one. So if you haven't seen it yet, linked in the description and in a pinned comment. As for your value plays this week, there are quite a few. Now, if you wanted to go with like Jhonata, Diniz, I don't hate it at all. I think that he's got the ability to knock out Marcin, Tybura right away, but he's not somebody that I want to play. I think the other side of that matchup is chef's kiss from a DraftKings perspective. Ramiz, Brahimaj, I'm not interested. You've got Jonathan Martinez, and I'll tell you, I picked Jonathan Martinez to win this fight. I still pick Jonathan Martinez to win this fight, not somebody I want to play on DraftKings. Reason being is because I think this fight goes the distance, and we've seen what it looks like when he goes the distance. 64 points there. If we go down here, 76 points. If we scroll down a bit more, another 60, 67. Scroll down a bit more, we're looking at 59 points in a decision win. So if this fight goes the distance, which I think it will, there's a chance you're not even getting 70 points out of Jonathan Martinez, and at his price, it's not going to be worth it even as an underdog. So I'm not interested in playing him, although I think he's going to win. Really, the first fighter that I'm considering putting in the player pool down below 8,000 would be Jim Miller at 7,600. Fun fact about Jim Miller, we have to go back, let's go as far back as we need to. Hold on, give me 1 second. Here in November 2016, that was the last time Jim Miller won a fight by decision. And since then, he's won some fights, he's lost some fights, but what's important is that he's finishing these fights. And when he's finishing these fights, he's scoring well on DraftKings. We'll take a look. You start looking at the points that he's scored since that last decision win in the fights that he's won: 102, 104, 116, 95, 103, 100, 89, 126, 97. Any of those scores are going to put you on the optimal lineup with Jim Miller at 7,600, especially on a slate like this. So I think that Jim Miller absolutely needs to be in value play consideration. I know a lot of people are going to get there. He's probably one of the more popular dogs on the slate, but for good reason. Eduardo Moura would be the next value play that I'm looking at here. I think this is just a perfect situation for her when you consider the price. I think recency bias is playing into this because last time out, she was 8,800. Before that, against Montserrat Ruiz, she was 9,400. So she's coming into these fights as a big favorite. And when she didn't deliver against Denise Gomes, people are going to say, okay, I'm off of it. Even though she was gassed, missed weight, down in a weight class that didn't make sense, still secured 5 takedowns in almost 8 minutes of control time. Now that she's up a weight class, she's still enjoying a size advantage, and she probably is going to have a bit better cardio this time around. I see her getting those 5 takedowns, the 7 plus almost 8 minutes of control time, landing more strikes, and maybe even finishing this fight. And if that's the case, she's got 85, 95, maybe even 100-point DraftKings upside. So I like Eduardo Moura not only to win this fight, but I like her from a DFS perspective. I feel the same way about Bassil Hafez. I think this is a buy low spot for Hafez, who last time out was a really big favorite, underperformed in some people's eyes even though he won the fight, but back-to-back fights where he's securing 3 takedowns, landing a lot of strikes in the process, and I think that Oban Elliott's going to be there to be hit. They've reverted to the old glove, so we're going to see more knockouts, even though last week people were getting cracked. And we're recording this after the weigh-in show. I typically do not even watch the weigh-in show. I don't really look at the weigh-ins. I just look at the numbers to see who made weight and who didn't make weight. Bassil Hafez made weight, though, and I was watching it live. The dude looked fantastic. And the team running the weigh-in show is talking about how he's training with Justin Gaethje and how he feels very prepared for this fight. These are details that I didn't really know. So Bassil Hafez is far and away my favorite underdog on the slate for those reasons. Training with Gaethje, coming into this one in good shape, good buy low spot for him. I think that people are a little bit too high on Oban Elliott. I saw somebody in the comments tell me Preston Parsons was better than Bassil Hafez. I disagree, brother. I think Bassil Hafez puts it on him this week at 7,400, one of my favorite plays on the slate. And really the last value play that I would consider, and it's cool when you look at the pricing, it's all kind of condensed into one area. So when we build lineups, it's going to start to fall in a bit of a pattern, but Michael Chandler at 7,200. This just seems like a kind of situation where Michael Chandler's going to be able to catch him. I think Oliveira, he let him off the hook last time out by playing into his game a little bit, but I think that Michael Chandler ends up winning this fight. And there's no other way that he wins this fight outside of winning by knockout and doing it early. Now they have 5 rounds to work. I don't think that matters. I think this fight could have been scheduled for 2 rounds and the outcome would be the same. Either Michael Chandler's knocking him out early or Charles Oliveira is going to knock him out early because he catches him in between the strikes. And of course he's up up against it, up against the guy who's already beaten him, against one of the best lightweights of all time, one of the best fight finishers in UFC history. But it surprises me how confident people could be in Charles Oliveira. Like, I'm picking Michael Chandler. I think he's going to win. And I do think that confidence is binary, but I just see people talking about Charles Oliveira like he's Superman. I think sometimes the outcome of fights distorts our image of what the fighter's performances are actually looking like, because how many times as a Charles Oliveira fan, I'm one of you, have you been watching a fight and you've been like, oh no, it's not looking good. People are telling me you can't trust Michael Chandler's fight IQ. I don't know if you can trust Charles Dubronk's coming back to win every fight. And you could say, oh, he beat Beneil Dariush. I don't know if Beneil Dariush is a top lightweight anymore, but Michael Chandler, even at 38 years old, can knock out anybody in this division. So I like him as a value play this week, and this is where I land. There are a couple of spots if you wanted to go with like Chris Weidman, maybe if you wanted to go with Stipe, because I know some people think Stipe is going to spring the upset. Sure. If you want to break everybody's ankles, go Paul Craig, hope that he ties up a submission, fine. But these are the value plays that I like. These are the ones that I would recommend you play. And we'll use these value plays to build some lineups. But before we do, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. And we'll start with building cash game lineups. So these are for your 50-50s, your head-to-heads, your double-ups. I think you're going to want somebody from this Jon Jones to Bo Nickal range in your cash game lineups. Really, whoever you choose, it does not matter. High finishing upside for each one of these fighters. Let's go ahead and plug in Ruffy just to take a look. So now we've got 8,080 left over. We're not going to be stacking any of the fights this week. It just doesn't seem worth it. And when I come down here, I think there's a good chance Paul Craig gets knocked out early. I think Romero is a lamb. Llontop, I have the other side, so we're not going to stack. I really don't like the idea of playing Stipe, although if you think Stipe is able to at least extend Jones in this one, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible play. But I probably would find myself just going up to one of the value plays here and just trying to make it work salary-wise elsewhere. Like, I would probably grab a Michael Chandler. I'd probably grab a Bassil Hafez. I don't think there's going to be a huge difference between the cash game lineups and your tournament lineups this week. Because normally in cash games, we stack the 5-round fights if we think that they're not going to finish too early. But with both 5-round fights on this card, I see both of them finishing maybe inside the first 2 rounds. So the losers in the main and the co-main event, I don't think they're going to give you that safe scoring floor that you're looking for. So I'm just going to go for a guy who I think is going to win in Michael Chandler. And now we'll go up here, 8,600 left over per fighter. I like Gall this week. If you wanted to, now that I'm saying it out loud and we're talking about cash game lineups, this would be the biggest difference in my opinion between building for cash and building for tournaments, is maybe plugging in somebody like Jonathan Martinez at 7,800, because then you can come back here and grab one of these expensive guys like a Jon Jones, for example. I wouldn't play Jonathan Martinez in tournaments, but for cash, even if he gets 70 points in a win, I'm fine with that. I just want to get the winners in the lineup. So if playing him down at his price gives me the chance to play 2 of the premium guys on the slate, I'm cool with that. Now you can adjust this a little bit as you see fit, but that would be the cash game formula for me. And I know many of you don't play cash. You don't care about the 50-50s, the head-to-heads, the double-ups. You want to take big swings. You want to swing for the fence, and that's cool. I'll show you how we build for that. We'll build some tournament lineups before we do. If you want to build some better lineups, you can go to kunithmma.com and get yourself access to the tools. So it's going to have the data model, the projections, the optimizer, the DFS strategy guide, and if you're somebody who bets, the official betting articles on there, the community parlay is on there as well. All that can be had with a total access package on kunithmma.com. That'll be linked in the description and in a pinned comment. So for your tournaments, where are we going to land? Well, I'll tell you right now, you might want to avoid playing Jon Jones. If you think he's going to give you a performance where, an Anthony Smith-like performance of 141, although he ain't fighting Anthony Smith this week. The performance against Chael Sonnen, where he just took him down, beat on him, used all of that first round to do it, and was able to maximize the scoring potential and get 123 DraftKings points, that's fine too. But when you start going through the scores, Jon Jones does not light up the DraftKings scoring column all that often. Even recently, 85 points, 104 against Cyril Gane. That's not going to cut it here. At 8,400, it was great. But at 9,500, no thank you. And he's the greatest of all time. So people are going to be like, okay, I'll automatically plug Jon Jones in, and then what do I do with the rest of the lineup? That's not what we're going to do. No. He's probably going to come in around 45% owned, maybe a little bit more in most of your contests. If you're playing single entry, it's probably going to be a little bit higher than that. When you could easily come up $200 more and play a guy like David Onama, who's got a much better matchup, a guy on short notice making his debut against David Onama, who's got bricks at the end ends of his arms. Maurcio, Ruffy, who can get those knockdowns, especially against a guy in Llontop who's Peruvian. Those guys can take a beating. So you're looking at multiple knockdown upside from Ruffy this week. Maybe like a little Carlos Paredes against the Leech kind of deal, where he just knocked him down, get up, knocked him down, get up. And Bo Nickal's fine. It's just he's the most expensive fighter on the slate, so things will probably get pretty tight for you pretty quickly. But if I had to build a lineup where I'm looking for upside, I'm also looking to get a bit different, I'll probably play somebody like David Onama. Now my time spent up here is gone. I'm not going to be able to afford either of the other three guys here, so now we're going to start to look a bit lower. Karine Silva's interesting, although she's fighting Vivi Araujo, who's typically not being finished. So these really high scores that she's posted before, she's finishing those fights. But when she didn't finish her last fight, even with 5 takedowns, 85 DraftKings points, and I think we probably get a similar kind of outcome. Do Bronx is fine as well. Again, I think that Michael Chandler's going to win, but it's not about playing the guys you think are going to win. It's about playing the guys who can score you a lot of points, and Charles Oliveira's got first round upside as much as anybody on the card. So if you want to play Do Bronx, cool. In this lineup though, I might play Eryk Anders. Reason being is because Eryk Anders is going to be looking for a lot of takedowns. He has a 40-year-old opponent in front of him. He's also got pop in his hands. I just don't think that he's really been wanting to strike all that much recently, but I could see him hurting Weidman with the hands early. So Eryk Anders at 8,500 at what I assume is going to be very, very low ownership, I'm cool with plugging him into the lineup. And then we've got 79.50 left over per. I'm going to come down here and I'll probably grab somebody like a Hafez, like a Jim Miller. 8,400 left over. I might just grab Michael Chandler. Now I've got 9,600. I could come up here and grab somebody like Ruffy. I'm just not leaving any salary left over. Although if you've built your lineup like this, it's probably different enough. You can get away with it. But if you really want to zig where others zag, you can play Marcin Tybura. He left 1,400 salary on the table. Tybura's got a huge grappling advantage here, and he knows it. He's a smart guy. He's been in there with champions. And we've seen him figure out ways to win against guys who are way more athletic, or they hit a lot harder, or they're better strikers, or they're better grapplers. And he's not going to go out there and win every time, but against Tai Tuivasa's catching him with his best shots. But it wasn't until Marcin Tybura was able to close distance, get the takedown. At that point, the fight was over. You look at that fight against Alexander Romanov. He has nothing for Alexander Romanov if he comes at him with everything early. And that's what happened. Romanov came at him with everything early. He stayed safe. He was able to weather that storm, and he was able to win late. He didn't finish him, but he was able to win rounds. You look at that fight against Walt Harris right there. He was eating some big shots, and then he was able to do what he does, get Walt Harris out of there. He fights smart. He knows what he's doing, and I think he can get takedowns in this fight. I think he can win by first round submission. So this is an idea for a tournament lineup that you might trot out there, and this is the kind of build where you look at it and you're like, yeah, I would never think to put this combination of guys together, and that's the one that ends up kicking your ass at the end of the night damn near every time. Let's be real. If you wanted to go ultra chalk donkey, here's what everybody's going to do. Jon Jones, Charles Oliveira. If you start your lineup like this, it's not to say that the upside isn't there, but you're going to have a lineup that is duplicated many times, despite what you think you're doing outside of that. Because at this point, people know that they need an underdog, right? So they're going to come down here. They're going to plug in Jim Miller, the most popular of underdogs, which again, not terrible. These guys can all score well, but it's going to be heavily duped. 79.66 left over per fighter. I'd be interested to see where most people would go in this situation. I think that maybe Eduardo Moura. I think enough people like myself are talking about, or where people are kind of taking notice. You might see somebody grab Diniz at this point, and with 8,400 left over, they might grab Marcus McGhee. Marcus McGhee coming off of 3 straight finishes. I got to put him in my lineup. I think this is the chalk zone. Where I think you could get a bit different with this is taking out somebody like Jon Jones, taking out Charles Oliveira. I'll leave Diniz in there. I'll leave Marcus McGhee in there, but just getting different with those top two, I think will pay dividends. Let's say you want to go with Mickey Gall, who's fighting a guy who literally has one path to victory, and that's to quickly get you to the ground and submit you. Like Ramiz Brahimaj is basically, what's the guy's name? Derek Minner. He's Derek Minner. And I'm not with that. I'm not with playing somebody like Derek Minner. So let's say you went with Mickey Gall, then you came up here, you grab Bo Nickal. I would prefer Mickey Gall and Bo Nickal over Jon Jones and Charles Oliveira in my lineup, just for the ownership's sake. And if you're running multiple lineups and you're not using like an optimizer that's telling you what to do, and you're hand building, we just build the other side of this matchup. You enter this. Then you take Marcus McGhee out, 8,600 left over. You come down here and you grab another underdog. You do Michael Chandler. Happy with that. Let's blow that up. I'll give you another look. Let's say you really wanted to play Bo Nickal. Let's say, how can you get Bo Nickal and David Onama in the same lineup. Can you get Ruffy in that lineup as well? You can't, because we would have to come down here and play somebody like Stipe. Whoa. If you think Stipe can win, and you think Araujo can win, that would give you enough for Michael Chandler. Yeah, it's not great. You would have to sacrifice one of these guys here. So let's get rid of that. But let's start with Nickal and David Onama just to see what that could look like if we can build around that with our value plays. So if I plugged in Eduardo Moura, I plugged in Moura and Hafez, probably have to come in here and plug in Jim Miller as well. Yeah, I mean, you're stuck either playing somebody like Jhonata, Diniz, or you're going to come down here, play Michael Chandler. Again, this range, not in love with it. But then there's some simple tweaks you can make, right? You can take Nickal out of there. You can come down here. You can grab McGhee Gall, 9,500 left over. Go play your damn John Jones. Do it. Why not? I'm telling you right now, this is your opportunity. This is your chance. If you have been playing DFS for a long time now, if you've been playing MMA DFS for a long time, and you feel like just losing and losing and losing, I promise you, you are doing the same thing every slate and you don't realize it because there are different names and different fighters, but they're essentially in the same spots. So what I encourage you to do, if you have not been getting the results that you're looking for with DFS, or you feel like you never have a chance to get in the money, or if it's like this, like let's say this is winning, this is the top, or you're going to be looking at it the other way. So let's say this is first place and this is last place. If each week you are entering lineups and you're kind of around here, your lineups are trash boat. There is no place you want to be less than the middle. If you are just in the middle, just with that kind of average lineup, that is the worst case scenario, because you either want your lineups to be so bad that you're damn near in last place, or you want to be so good you're in first place. Because if it's bad enough for you to be in last place, a couple of things go your way, that means it's probably a first place lineup. You get me? And I get messages and things like that from time to time where people are asking, what do you think is the safer lineup for X tournament? If you're thinking like that, get that thinking out of the window. There's no such thing as safety with your DraftKings lineups. You should be playing for the most random outcome ever, because at the end of the night, that's the one that wins, the most random outcome ever. And if you're looking at the winning lineup at the end of the night and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, that was such an obvious lineup, that's cope. It was not obvious. If it was obvious, you would have put it in there. So this is your chance to do something completely new, build that weird lineup, leave salary on the table. Don't be afraid to roster women's MMA. Don't be afraid to get away from the chalky favorites, the ones that are supposed to go out there and smash, because sometimes they just don't. Because at the end of the day, you are gambling. It is a risk that you are taking, so why not be risky? Match the chaos of the game, if that makes sense. For some of you, that will make sense, and hopefully you'll see the results right away. But enough of me rambling. I will let you go. I appreciate it. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm, and I'll see you next week, and I wish you the best of luck at UFC 309.